Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, May 27th, 2021, and today we're going to be taking a look at the January 6th Commission, one that I mentioned yesterday and a couple days before that, because the Democratic Party seems to be focusing all of their attention in the United States Senate solely on this commission. Now, we have a new revelation in the Republican column as to who's supporting it, and it comes from Senator Susan Collins from the state of Maine. But as of currently, she's only one additional support vote, which brings the number to 53. Currently speaking, we don't know how 10 senators are going to vote. 28 have vehemently come out and said, come out vehemently against the January 6th Commission, and 9 of which are saying that they are under consideration. Democrats would need 7 out of those 9 in order to pass this bill without a filibuster shooting it down. That's the one thing the Democratic Party is really trying to avoid at this point, that a filibuster started by Republicans could single-handedly end the January 6th Commission. Now, the Democratic Party, of course, was viewing this as a very important thing. The January 6th Commission was something that was supposed to be bipartisan, an effort that was aided with Democrats and Republicans. In fact, in the House vote, 35 Republicans crossed over party lines to vote for the commission. It was a 252 vote in the advancement. So looking at the Senate, you might expect a couple of other senators to cross over, but so far we only have 3 out of 50. 28 of which have said absolutely not. And one of those 28 is Senator Richard Burr, a Republican who voted to convict President Trump, saying that he's not going to vote for this January 6th Commission. And the way that this is now becoming a battle between Democrats and Republicans is quite unfortunate. And now we are starting to see some top names put down their foot and saying this is something that this is a very important thing to the Democratic Party and a very important thing to the American public. And we have done everything we can. And yet still, the overwhelming majority of Republicans refuse or have not supported the bill. Only 3 of which have. The statement from Joe Manchin is as follows, quote, "There's no excuse for any Republican to vote against this commission since Democrats have agreed to everything they asked for. Mitch McConnell has made this his political position, thinking it will help the 2022 elections. They do not believe the truth will set you free, so they continue to live in fear." End quote. So Joe Manchin is saying that Republicans are afraid of the truth, that they are afraid of what this January 6th commission might reveal, and citing that the Democratic Party has compromised and worked with the GOP to get to those 60 votes. The Democratic Party isn't naive. They know Republicans were going to try to stop this from the beginning. They went into this with full knowledge of that. Mitch McConnell came out completely against it straight from the beginning. So they were willing to work with Republicans, and they are working with them currently, trying to make sure that beyond these 3, Collins, Murkowski, and Romney, that they can get 7 others to vote in favor of this. Because all they need is 10 out of those 50 senators. You're talking about 20% crossing over. In the United States House of Representatives, I believe it was a little bit less than that. That was around, let's see here, 17% of the Republicans in the House voting for the January 6th Commission. But the Senate actually was much more favorable for the Democrats in terms of the not the Capitol insurrection, in terms of the vote on the legitimacy of the 2020 election. You saw just a handful of crossover votes versus the majority of House Republicans voting to say that the election results should be overturned and that the election results should be challenged from the 2020 election. You know, the majority of Republicans in the House voted for that, and the overwhelming majority of Republicans in the Senate voted to keep the results and to certify them. And for the vote to sort of not necessarily flip-flop, but in a sense, yes, that's true, where there's more support in the House for this than there is support in the Senate, despite there being more moderate members in the Senate because they don't need to be as partisan and as extreme towards the right. Looking at the Senate, this is quite interesting to see. But Democrats are really trying to ramp up all their efforts. That's exactly why you're seeing Joe Manchin coming out with a very, very critical statement. I mean, saying there's no excuse, trying to turn this into a situation in which the Republican Party is doing this solely for electoral gain in 2022. People can argue whether or not that's right or wrong, but the optics of it does look bad. It looks pretty bad. And Mitt Romney even acknowledges it as well. When they ask, what this backing of the bill would actually do for Mitt Romney and for the Republican Party, it would allow them to reveal the truth. But Romney says if they don't pass it, that it will look, not well in terms of reflecting on the party. That it would be viewed as, in his words, Republicans would be seen as not wanting to let the truth come out. It's the same story from Manchin and Romney. It's the same story from both sides because that's exactly how it looks. And I did talk in the video about how I believe that the election should have been something that was not necessarily a partisan effort. That this was a circumstance in which we should have acknowledged the election results and moved on. And for the insurrection to even have occurred is quite alarming. And the fact that many Republicans are not even voting for the investigation into it, a bipartisan effort at that, is quite interesting. And it does reveal something a little bit strange about the Republican Party that might tip off or might tick off some of these voters that are expecting the Republicans to try to work with Democrats in this instance, because that's not exactly what's happening here. So Romney's warning is that, if you don't back this, it will not reflect well amongst the GOP. And it's not just Joe Manchin on the Democratic side. I mean, beyond Chuck Schumer, which we will talk about in just a moment, Kyrsten Sinema, someone who hasn't exactly been, obviously, a colleague for Democrats, but not necessarily their biggest proponent, has come out and trying to press the GOP senators on this commission, trying to say that they need to get this done. I mean, Kyrsten Sinema has been someone who has been trying to appease independent and Republican voters since she entered the United States Senate. And since she does come from the state of Arizona, one can sort of understand why. But then again, Arizona is not nearly as conservative as West Virginia. But Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are these two token centrists in the United States Senate. They're the ones that the GOP is going to consistently, time and time again, try to peel away from the Democratic Party in terms of their votes. And for the majority of the time under the Trump administration, it's quite interesting to see Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema voted with the GOP more than they did with the Democrats. But again, understand where Manchin is coming from. He's coming from a state where Democrats get, nearly 1/4, 1/3 of the vote at that, versus Kyrsten Sinema, who comes from a state, she receives a little bit more criticism, and I would say fairly so, largely because she comes from a state where the Democrat-Republican vote share is quite even, and in other states where GOP senators are representing similar states, such as Ron Johnson in Wisconsin, you're seeing a 93% Trump vote score versus Kyrsten Sinema, who's at 51% in favor of Trump. Not necessarily policies, but in favor of the way that President Trump would have voted had he been in the United States Senate and the way that he urged senators to vote. So all in all, it's quite interesting to see that Manchin and Sinema, of course, the two that are always recognized as the ones who want to avoid abolishing the filibuster, are pressing the GOP senators. They are making sure that their voices are heard, that, these two Democrats will not go quietly into the night knowing that the Democratic Party did compromise with the GOP or tried to compromise on many, many levels. And I said that I would mention Chuck Schumer, because Chuck Schumer wanted this to be done before Memorial Day. He wanted this vote to be, all said and done largely so they could either paint a political picture that Republicans refused to go through with the commission, or for the commission to go through and for eventual, investigation data to be released, conclusions to be sent out, statements to be made. I think that's what Chuck Schumer was looking for. Either way, I think that this is a win-win for Democrats. I do think that what they are trying to do at this point is put the Republicans in a checkmate position where they have nowhere to go, where they are either going to vote for it and then consequently be revealed as the main reasons why the insurrection occurred, or for the Democratic Party to look at the 47 no votes and to use that as leverage in the 2022 midterm elections. So forcing the Republican vote, while it won't probably gain them voters, I honestly don't think this January 6th commission is something that's going to pass easily or pass at all. And I think we're supposed to find out today. I mean, it's Thursday. And we were not supposed to find out next week. I mean, we're talking about this needing to get done by Saturday. So we're going to have some type of revelation or some type of news released on this story tonight or tomorrow. But for Chuck Schumer in this instance, this is good politics. I think Democrats are really trying to use this in a way to come out on top regardless of what happens. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And I'm not going to try to say that this is something that should be happening per se, because bipartisan effort, I think, is something that needs to occur in the United States Senate. But if we're talking about it on a way that it's viewed in terms of the electoral landscape and the way that voters will view it, there is no way the Democratic Party looks bad in this instance. What you are seeing Mitch McConnell try to argue here is essentially that, this adds nothing, saying that he doesn't want to support this because there are already investigations into the insurrection, and saying that Democrats are trying to take President Trump and bring him back into the political atmosphere, bring President Trump into 2022. And I think he's right. But that reasoning won't resonate well with voters because voters saw the insurrection occur live on television. They know that those senators were cowering and hiding in their own offices or underground through the tunnels under the Capitol. I think that's what really is in the minds of many American voters when they see all of these Republicans saying, no, I don't want to investigate it, when the majority, overwhelming majority of the country at that, 60-70%, believe that the insurrection was truly Trump supporters and inspired by President Trump. This just doesn't look good. Everything about American politics mainly is optics. And for this to be a vote that either fails as a result of Republicans with 0 Democrats coming out in opposition, the fact is Manchin and Sinema have been completely for it, it seems. Completely for it up to this point. And that's what really is going to drive a lot of this discussion. These centrist Democrats who were iffy about a $15 an hour minimum wage, who are iffy about a number of other things that the Democratic Party would like to pass in terms of key pieces of legislation, not at all considering abolishing the filibuster, yet are 100% for this January 6th commission. You're talking about senators that backed the Republican Party more than they backed the Democratic Party in many votes, and did under the past one term of President Trump, and since Sinema was, brought into office in 2019. But all in all, you have 2 Democrats who almost, a lot of the time, not almost always, not nearly almost always, but a lot of the time do back the GOP, but are completely in favor of this, trying to bring over some Republicans, and the only ones that they could were Murkowski, Collins, Romney. With the 9 who are still considering, it probably isn't going to change. The 9 is probably going to add into that red column. And all Democrats, technically need is 7 more out of the remaining 47 senators. But with 28 already opposed, with 10 who probably are going to oppose that just haven't spoken on it, I don't really expect any of these 10 in the unknown column to vote for the January 6th commission. Out of the 9, I wouldn't be hopeful if I was a Democrat. If I was looking at this and saying, I'm a Senate page, or I'm in the Senate, I'm working with the Democratic Party, would they expect this vote to go through? Probably not. Given that, we are going to see this crunched up right before Memorial Day weekend, it probably will not. I don't think that these Republican senators are going to want to have to turn back to their constituents and say, I backed the January 6th commission. And for some of them, that might play well. For example, if you're in Wisconsin, or if you're in a state, such as Florida, a swing state, you have states where you have split electorates where the majority of the state might believe the January 6th commission is good, just based off support from independents and Republicans. But for those who do come from Wyoming and Arkansas and Indiana, I sort of understand, your constituents would be more angry than complacent or happy with the January 6th commission. But for those coming from swing states, they really are going to, have this viewed as a negative vote on their record, as something that would be proven to be detrimental in their future election bids. But if they're retiring, then really nothing is going to impact them. So I'm not expecting much from the GOP. I think the Democratic Party is going to try to make this the #1 issue as of right now. Chuck Schumer isn't trying to rush this bill for no reason. Making sure that the January 6th commission is voting on is largely an effort to make the Democratic Party come out on top regardless of what happens. And I think that is going to work. I think that this strategy that the Democratic Party has employed so far is working, but it's all about how they play it. If they can use this in 2022 and say the Republicans refused to go through the Capitol insurrection because they were part of it, that will be something that will work well with voters. If it does end up passing, Republicans are also at a point where the independent commission likely will come out and say maybe Republicans, or largely Republicans, were responsible for the insurrection. And either way, it's negative. So Democrats are trying to do everything they can to save themselves for the 2022 midterm elections. We all know that it probably won't be too good for Democrats based off the way that it's looking. The GOP does have the advantage in the House. I'm not going to lie to you about that. And I do think that looking at the Senate, the Democratic Party is going to want to try to expand their majority. That way they can counteract any significant gains from the GOP in the House of Representatives. Because right now they are at the, will of Sinema and Manchin, 2 Democratic senators. But if Democrats can reach 52 senators, for example, maybe flipping Pennsylvania and flipping Wisconsin, or flipping Pennsylvania and flipping North Carolina, we don't really know at this point. But if the Democrats can do that, they can bring themselves up to 52 and completely negate the opinions of Sinema and Manchin. So the Democratic Party is trying to do everything they can to reach that point because they know that these 2 senators are going to be the bane of their existences. But as of right now, for this vote in particular, every single Democrat is 100% on board. Only 3 Republicans are. We will see what happens with the 9. This vote is going to be forced before Memorial Day weekend, according to Chuck Schumer and those inside the United States Senate. This vote likely will fail, but it will have electoral implications may be significant, maybe not. We have yet to see over the next couple of months how this issue does pan out amongst voters, whether or not they care in a few months from now. But there will be electoral implications whether they pass it or not, and Republicans are in a tricky position because they can't win no matter what they do in this instance. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my post 2020 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.